Hey there, need help finding the right Tesla? Sure, in this video, I'll be talking through each of the model's dimensions, cargo capacity, and specs. So let's dive right in. So first, let's start off with the Model S, and we're going to talk about the dimensions. So it has a length of 196 inches, a height of 56.9 inches, and a width of 77.3 inches. So this is a pretty big sedan. It's the same size as the 5 Series. So now let's talk about the cargo capacity, and it has a cargo capacity of 28 cubic feet. So it is pretty roomy in there. You will have a pretty good amount of headroom and legroom in both the front and second row. The Model S has a pretty big frunk, and you have an enormous hatchback. Yeah, for those of you who don't know, the Model S is not a saloon. It's a hatchback sedan. The hatchback just has so much space, so really you will be very comfortable in this vehicle. Now let's talk about the Model S's specs, and starting off with the long range, you have a range of 412 miles, a top speed of 155 miles per hour, and a 0 to 60 of 3.1 seconds, which is as fast as the Model 3 Performance. Now the Plaid Model S has a range of 390 miles, a top speed of 200 miles per hour, and a 0 to 60 in 1.99 seconds. Now let's move on to the Model X, and starting off with the dimensions, it has a length of 198.3 inches, a height of 66 inches, and a width of 78.7 inches. So this is a pretty big SUV. In fact, it is bigger than the X6. Now let's talk about the cargo capacity of the Model X, and you have a cargo capacity of 88 cubic feet. There is a massive difference between the Model X and S in terms of cargo capacity. You will have more legroom and headroom in this vehicle, and the hatchback space will be bigger, so is the front space. Now let's talk about the specs. So starting off with the long range, you have a range of 360 miles, a top speed of 155 miles per hour, and a 0 to 60 in 3.8 seconds. So that's still pretty fast, but not as fast as the Model S long range. Now the Plaid Model X has a range of 340 miles, a top speed of 163 miles per hour, and a 0 to 60 in 2.5 seconds. That is still crazy fast, but once again, not as fast as the Model S Plaid. So now let's move on to the Model 3. It has a length of 184.8 inches, a height of 56.6 inches, and a width of 72.8 inches. So this is a mid-size sedan. It's about the same size as a 3 Series or a C-Class. Now let's talk about the Model 3's cargo capacity, 15 cubic feet. So that is smaller than the Model S, but that's mainly because the Model 3 is a mid-size luxury sedan. It's about the same size as a 3 Series or an Audi A4. So in the front row, you will be perfectly fine. You'll still have loads of legroom and headroom. In the second row, you'll still have a good amount of legroom, but headroom depends upon your height. If you're over 6 feet, then you may struggle with headroom in the Model 3 second row. In fact, the Model 3 is a saloon. It's not a hatchback sedan like the Model S. So being a saloon, you have a trunk. So it is a pretty big trunk, and it also has a pretty big trunk. So the Model 3 is pretty spacious. Now let's talk about the specs for the Model 3. Starting off with the standard range, it is a range of 263 miles, a top speed of 140 miles per hour, and a 0 to 60 of 5.3 seconds. Now the long range Model 3 has a range of 353 miles, a top speed of 145 miles per hour, and a 0 to 60 of 4.2 seconds. And finally, the performance, which has a 315 miles of range, 162 miles per hour top speed, and a 0 to 60 of 3.1 seconds, which is as fast as the Model S long range. Now let's move on to the Model Y, and it has a length of 187 inches, a height of 63.9 inches, and a width of 75.6 inches. So this is a pretty big crossover. The Model Y is basically a Model 3, but just bigger and higher. Now let's talk about the cargo capacity, and it has a cargo capacity of 68 cubic feet. So not quite as big as the Model X, but definitely bigger than the Model 3. So definitely in this vehicle you will have more headroom than in the Model 3. Legroom will be fairly similar to the Model 3, but still the Model Y is roomier. In fact, this car being a crossover, you have a hatchback, which is enormous. Not as enormous as the Model X, but bigger than the Model S, since the Model S is a sedan. And the Model Y has a bigger frunk than the Model 3 and S. Now let's talk about the Model Y specs. So the long-range Model Y has a range of 326 miles, a top speed of 135 miles per hour, and a 0 to 60 at 4.8 seconds. And the performance Model Y has a range of 303 miles, a top speed of 155 miles per hour, and a 0 to 60 of 3.5 seconds. So the Model Y isn't as fast as the other three, but still, it is one of the fastest crossovers you can currently buy. So now, coming to the conclusion, what is the right Tesla for you? It basically depends on your needs. If you want an electric crossover that you're planning on to use as the family car that can hold up to 7 seats and is affordable, the Model Y is your car. But if you want a large electric SUV which can hold up to 7 seats and you're planning on using as the family car and is more luxurious than the Model Y, then the Model X is your car. If you're planning on to have an electric sedan which is affordable, then the Model 3 is your car, which can also be used as a family vehicle because it's still pretty roomy. But if you want a larger electric sedan which is more luxurious and has more range, then the Model S is your car. So I really hoped this episode helped you choose the right Tesla, and that brings us on to the end of this episode. Thanks everybody for watching. Feel free to smash that subscribe button, turn on notifications, hit that like button, leave a comment down below, and see everybody in the next episode.